Welcome back to Gaffers Salon. I'm John Roach, a gaffer here in New York City. Thanks for coming back. We're going to talk CRLS. Now, I've talked a lot about CRLS. I kind of went into my backstory with Jakob when I did the review on the Snapbridge, the DOP Choice Lightbridge collaboration. But suffice it to say, I was a very early adopter. These are the OG 100 centimeter panels that I bought back in 2018. And if you look at them, you could see a fair amount of fingerprints, some little color aberrations here, some scratches, there's a little bit of gold going on up in here, fingerprints around the edges. Is it an issue? I've not personally found it to be that problematic. Maybe if I put a color meter to the brand new one and this one, I'd see a slight color shift. But by and large, these are still functioning. These are still renting. They're still working perfectly well. But it was a concern with a lot of people. Oh, they get fingerprinted. Oh, they're fragile. Oh, they're not going to hold up in rental. For me, that hasn't proven to be true. But I could see from maybe a rental house perspective, they start to look not so great. But functional wise, they're pretty good. What I tend to do is I have two drive kits. As my things get older and beat up, I migrate the more worn ones, the more beat up ones into one drive kit, and then I keep a more pristine one that I send out on rentals. Now, years ago, I went to Vienna. I was visiting Jakob. They were shooting a feature film, and he had, must have been the 15-year-old early prototypes of kind of a number one that were just scratched and beat to crap. And they had 6K pars going into them up to number 4. They were doing this sort of wintry light look, and they were working perfectly fine, right? For me, it wasn't a huge problem, but I know Jakob is really trying to solve this fingerprinting issue, this oxidation issue. How can we make the surface better? So in the mail the other day came this little 15 centimeter number 3 reflector. And it looks just like all the other ones I have, except this is now CRLS 2.0, Touchproof. So they've gone back to the drawing board and refigured out how to make this surface sort of fingerprint touch-proof. And I haven't put it through the test yet. This just came in the mail. But I think that was one of the major things that was really bugging Jakob and really trying to figure out how they could improve this issue of fingerprints, oxidation, etc. So I thought what would be interesting is to hop on a Zoom with Jakob, sort of talk to him about this new iteration of CRLS 2.0, this touch-proof, what their thinking was, what new products and other accessories they're thinking about that are going to come out in 2025. In addition to that, I reached out to Uwe Greiner. I'll see if I'm pronouncing his name right when we hop on the call. Uwe's an ICLS member who I knew about and I knew was a big CRLS user. And so Jakob had sent him a whole bunch of the new 2.0 Touchproof to really put to the test. So he's been dragging them through mud and whatever. So we'll get Uwe's feeling on what the differences are between the OEM original CRLS and now the 2.0 Touchproof series. All right, gentlemen, welcome. So CRLS 2.0, I'm going to let I've said this name wrong like 10 times now. So Uwe?
Very good.
You introduced your ICLS member based in Munich. And essentially your area is narrative and episodic TV and feature films. And you've had CRLS in your hands for, 4 years now. So you have a good amount of experience. So tell me, give me your pronunciation of your name again.
So my name is Uwe Greiner. So this is how we say it in German.
And of course, Jakob Ballinger, CEO of the Lightbridge, Christian Berger's gaffer for years and years. So Jakob, I'm going to turn it over to you to explain what CRLS 2.0 is all about.
Sure. Yeah, I just say for everybody who's wondering, my field is right now bad internet connection. So I had to drive into the city to get some good connection. And I'm sitting in the car, but we do what we have to do to talk about the good stuff. So CRLS 2.0, now for 8 years now, we've been making really high-end precision reflectors. And the issue was always since we stopped doing a little art house stuff and people started to use it, is actually to how to implement it to the new workflow, because it's not just a light through a window and a frame in front of it. The light has to go somewhere else. The reflector has to go where the light used to be, with all the advantages you get from that. But the problem was, or the issue that a lot of people had, especially with rentals, is as you all know, you shouldn't do this, right? But now you can. And that's the big difference to Touchproof, because now we have this generation 2 reflector out, which means it's the same surfaces. Diffusion 1, 2, and 3. Diffusion 4 super wide stay the same. And now you can make these fingerprints on them. And even after weeks after use, you can clean them off. And for us, that's a big thing, because, quality has everything to do with workflow. And with the productions these days, speed is much more important than ever. So you want to take care of creating, not cleaning, right? So after the shoot's done, back in the warehouse, whenever, you can remove these stains of fingerprints, even weeks after, even if it's in salt water. We did a lot of tests too. They come off later, and Uwe did some extensive tests on this too. So that's really the main thing for us right now. Looks the same, works the same, but the workflow is faster and much easier than before. So no pains of, oh my God, what is the rental going to do when they come back? So after 8 doing this, it's huge. Yeah.
I got mine back, my OG 2018, I got them, and I've had them. What is that? 7 years, and they go out a ton. And yes, they're the first 3 months we had them, we were very careful. We were trying to use gloves, but you know how long that lasted with crews. So they were coming back to me fingerprinted, and I would spend time cleaning them. But as you know, after a couple days, that acid in your fingers would tend to etch those fingerprints in. And then I was having problems. Sometimes they would use them in the rain, put the coroplast covers back on the 100Cs. I'd look at them 4 days later, and they'd have all sorts of watermarked, staining, which could often be hard to remove. And then maybe acid rain, factors in. So are you saying like the bulk? I mean, it's still metal. It's going to scratch if you're not careful with it, but relative to sort of staining and fingerprints and I guess oxidation, is that part of what's been
Yeah.
solved?
So it's a multi-layer process, the whole thing. So when you look at the reflector, you can't see it because it's in the, oops, sorry, here we go, into the micros. Here we go.
Yep.
Into where it really goes to the final layers. So there were always multiple layers attached to it, because it's aluminum type grade A. So we started testing 6 years ago already with nano protection. It eats into the aluminum, and a lot of bit about the process of getting diffused light is the precise structure within the aluminum. So we couldn't change that. And obviously, the quality is key here to be consistent, because we want people to use generation 1 with generation 2, and it has to look the same. So we really had to go through this process of how to figure it out. So basically, yes, micro scratches, fingerprints, salt water. If you clean it after a couple of days, everything will come off. If you throw it on the floor, if you slip on it, it is what it is, right? I mean, it's
Yep.
still a reflector.
Yep.
But that it. So basically, it takes care of not cleaning on set,
Yep.
and taking care of it later on, and not always have to, go on set and kind of clean it to make it look nice. So that's the big thing.
Now you've been testing these in Germany, right? You've had a set for a while, and you've been sort of putting them through the paces.
Yeah, I was testing it when we were shooting the last show for some weeks. And what I really liked is it was so easy to clean, because sometimes the DP is irritated, if he sees some fingerprints on it and things like this, or watermarks. And so he's like, oh, is it still the same? And then it's not this big cleaning process. It's just, wiping it off, and then it's gone. So we put it out of the case, we just gave it a small clean and then put it into the set, and it was easy to work with. So that was really cool to do. So you don't have to think about, is it clean? What will the DP think about it? And it doesn't take time, it's not about thinking, is it clean now? Do we have to, what do we have to use to clean it? And when is time for that? And so that was good for the workflow, especially on a fictional film, because you don't have the time for long processes, let's say.
So in addition, though, you were actually putting stuff on the surface and letting it sit as a test. I think We have a picture. Let me pull that up. So explain what this is?
Yeah, it was everything we found, like it was like butter, and so we put it on our fingers and print it on the surface, and then we put it into the sun, and then we kept it for, let's say, 2 weeks or 1 week, because we were like out for a week for like day exterior shoots where we knew we won't use it. And then when we came back to stage, we just easily cleaned it, and I can show you just with a cloth. That's and then it looks like that. You can see this.
Yep.
That was just like 20 seconds with a cloth, and it was clean again.
I was going to say, is the cleaning process any different? Is it the magic eraser, or is it now just cloth, or what's the procedure?
Well, so that's a major point both of you are stepping on. It used to be with Generation 1 isopropyl alcohol. And I would not recommend to use it with Generation 2. For one, it's an extra thing you got to carry. And on set, it's just water. And afterwards, it's just water. Like Uwe said, with the cleaning cloth, that's it. Magic Eraser is with Diffusion 4. I would not use it on Generation 2 because, again, it's multi-layers. And every time you're going to be eating down in the layers, the more you clean it, the more stains it gets. So especially like with really heavy detergents like, alcohol and stuff, if it stays on there, it gets cleaned, then it's not so good. So just water, really simple and easy, and it's done with. And that was the whole idea behind it. Yeah.
And I think you also mentioned that you were looking at having some relatively significant price reductions as you move into 2.0.
Yeah. So I came from, because I'm at heart, I'll always be a gaffer. And for me, it was always serving people, DPs, and now, serving all the colleagues that are working with it. So I'm still looking at it from a perspective of not saying, um, what can we do to make more sales? I'm always looking at it from a perspective, what do we need to do to serve everybody on set to tell the stories that need to be told and the moods that need to be lit? So the whole idea was what we was touching about earlier was about workflow. How do we work with these reflectors? And how do we keep it simple and easy? And the price point is another, it's we have to do it. Money is not there the way it used to be for the productions. There are some peak productions that still have it, stuff like Uwe is working on, but most of the people, they're working like even Netflix is saying 30 million gets cut into 3 into 10 million pieces.
Yeah.
So we have to take care that budgets can be where people can use the gear. Otherwise, it doesn't make use of it. Otherwise, it's just, great that it's fast on set, but if it's too expensive, it won't end up there. So that's the reason we went through this whole process through bigger manufacturing mounts plus new manufacturers. We were able to really significantly cut down the costs of manufacturing. And that's the reason we now can offer at almost about 30% cheaper than the old price list is the new gear, and all reflectors can be bought individually. So everybody who has Generation 1 doesn't have to rebuy everything. You just rebuy the reflectors you need, and that's about it. And that's the reason, we really took this big step now in reshaping the company to make that possible.
Yeah. Are there any other new accessories or mounts? I know I saw here in New York, like Manuel Billiter and Ted Lahane, and they have the quad for the 4 panels, the 400 centimeters. And then I saw, for example, Decon talking about his round set of reflectors. Now, was that a special order? Was that, you've always done custom sizes, but was that something that you're putting out, or that was just a one-off custom for him?
So we always do custom sizes and custom orders. And so round ones obviously are possible too, and Decon wanted some round ones.
And what point is 2.0 you think going to start shipping internationally?
So here's the big thing, right? Good question. We are, and after 8 years, we are still a small company, even if for a lot of people out there, it doesn't feel that way. And I like it that way because I don't need to build 1,000 people employee thing with everything that comes with it. I like to have a crew. I still know everybody's name, basically. That's what I agreed with myself with. That's how big it's going to get. So the idea was to say, we have to ship in batches. There's no way that now, because it's a complete rehaul, right? It's like starting 8 years ago, we have to replace everything. So all the warehouses all around the world have to be redone. So it's going to be shipped in batches. And it's actually cool. So what we're going to do is each week a new batch is going to be done. It's going to be shipped out. And in each batch, that's a couple of pallets, I'm going to add gift vouchers. With a special gift like a drive or a move or a snap bridge or something. So one person's going to be lucky that gets something off a batch and they're going to get a gift voucher. If they post and say, hey, I got something off a batch too, they get a free kit. So just to keep everybody going and understanding how we're working here. And there is going to be a waiting time, and Lightbridge products have always been high in demand. So we have to keep it that way, because otherwise it will become a different entity, and we need to concentrate on innovation. And we can't do that if suddenly it means we have to be able to fulfill everything in a couple of weeks. Suddenly you're a huge factory that cannot be there for individual projects and cannot be there for innovation anymore. So that's a big difference. What I see companies out there doing things is that we need to keep it at a size that I can serve the community specifically, and not in a general global major way. That's where different companies are really good at it.
Was there any new, just to circle back to the mounting question, I think at one point, I can't remember if we were talking about this, but for example, on the snap bridge, maybe being able to articulate independently the 25C or
Yeah.
whatever you stick in there.
Yeah, we kind of pushed it back a little bit
Okay.
because the generation 2 was more important. But
Right.
yeah, we're going to have easier snapping mountings to the snap bridge to mount the reflectors. And what we were also showing at BSC show that's going to be launching in May, we're going to have a grid system. Uwe, there's actually one in Vienna if you want to test it in your next production. So you can take the C100s and you can build any size you want, basically, like on a fly swatter. You put them on, and we now have them in London in 2x2 meters, and they're using them, just for bigger sources with an 18K underneath. So they're really for the big productions, to make bigger sizes. So that's just going to be a small upgrade. It's like just a shackle basically that mounts to trusses that goes
Right.
onto the 100, and you just can put the C100s together by screwing the yoke off. Yeah. Hey, can we circle back to Uwe? I'd really love to know about his workflow with using reflectors, and how that's been, and setting it up and mounting it, taking it down, and what the problem for your crews has been with the cleaning process and the whole thing. Because obviously for me it's yeah, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So the funny thing is that the crew is always a little bit sensitive with it. So sometimes it took more time to bring it up, because everybody's like, oh, where are the gloves, and be careful getting it out, and things like this. And this, these small things that are adding may sometimes make the reflector a little bit more slowly. And so that changed with the generation 2 test last year. So because my crew was like easier to handle with it, so it brought more speed into the process. So that was quite nice. But that was an issue some years ago. I think it was in a way psychological from the crew, that they handle all this stuff with care, because I think maybe because they are mine, I'm owning them. So my crew doesn't want to break it or something. But yeah, and that is quite an improvement. If it's just it's like 10 seconds here and 20 seconds there, and then you have to change it from 2 to 3, so another 30 seconds that you are slowlier than you could be if you're not so gentle. So from that perspective, it's quite an improvement.
Yeah, in the first year I was a lot more careful, and then it became really clear quickly on set that, and particularly when they went out on rentals, that nobody was going to follow the wearing gloves, and they would come back fingerprinted, and sometimes a ding on the corner, sometimes a scratch. But as you use these a lot, and at one point I pulled out my absolute worst number 3. It had staining, it had a lot of fingerprints, it had some ding corners, and I pulled out a brand new 3 that I had never used before. And I put them up and I looked at them and I'm like, Maybe the color shifted 100 Kelvin or something, but by and large, it was identical. And that was my absolute. Now, in fairness, if it was a zero, we would be seeing that scratch and those things probably thrown. But that said, I think 2.0 is huge. They're going to look and last longer. It's just a massive improvement. For cleaning and as you say, workflow and speed. All the bulk of the concerns have now been eliminated. Right. So the quicker we can do our jobs safely and efficiently and all that is huge. So even saving 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes or not having to clean these at the end of the day, not have to worry about it. Oh, we'll get to it next week after we wrap, whatever. That's a huge, huge savings.
Yeah, and on big shows, it's also all about speed, because on big shows you have a lot of people, so it generates a lot of costs every minute. So it's all about speed. For example, on one big show that brought my DP to CLRS, because he realized that he knows if he puts on a 2, that he knows in advance what happens if he puts a 3 on. So does it make sense or not? It's not like putting another reflector and testing if it might be a little bit softer or something, because at one point he knew, okay, if I change from 2 to 3, I exactly know what's happening. So and that brought us to the product. But so the product is perfect for workflows on big shows, or I think on every show. But if you can speed it up by not being so sensitive, maybe it's a psychological thing, it's a big advantage.
And I think you guys were saying in that, I heard you say, Jacob, it's just the uniformity. Anywhere you go in the world, anytime you order a CRLS, you know what you're getting. The DP knows what a 3 does, it knows what a 2 does. And unlike the old reflector boards, the silver leaf is gone. Oh, it's sort of scraped off. Oh, this is a Matthews board. That's a Norm's board. It was always a crapshoot. What you got 6 reflectors. They were all going to be slightly different and locked into sort of a very narrow plane of quality, right? So that I think that's pretty huge.
It was very interesting when we got to Morocco 2 or 3 years ago on a show, and the DP experienced the CLRS on that show. And before, he was upfront, he doesn't really matter about reflectors. But then when we went to Morocco, I asked him, so what something special we need? And he said, yeah, we should have the CLRS reflectors with us, because then we exactly know what's happening there.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a big aha moment, let's say. So it's like, okay, it's can go wherever you want, and you know exactly what you get. It's if you put a sky panel, if you have a sky panel in Australia, it's the same as in Brazil. You exactly know what you're getting, and that's the tool you're lighting your actors. It's crazy to have let's say $20,000 fixture, and then go over like a cheap reflector who's killing it.
Yeah, what you're saying speaks so true to this whole process of this last 8 years, because that's what professional tools is. It's consistency. We know what we're getting. It's exactly what Uwe is saying. And for me, the decision now with going from generation 1 to generation 2 was, how much do we have to get the price down, going to how big do those volumes have to become. And we tested a lot of big, huge factories and see what happens. The problem is, the more you go into mass, the less control you have over detail and consistency. And for me, that was a big moment to understand why people that have been inspired by reflectors and doing them again too, is to say, oh, I understand how they can get to the price point now, and I also understand why they can't keep up with the quality. You can't at a certain mass volume. It's impossible. We still do QC checks on each reflector that comes out of the machine. It gets checked by hand to make sure, does it fit, does it match it. And of all our partners, they all have a lighting setup there. They have their light on the stand. They have to put the reflector on the top. They have to check the light field. So we all have this stuff in there. that's the reason the price will always be more expensive than other people can do it, because those are the people we want to serve, is the people that need the consistency and that needs the quality and lighting, because creating moods with light matters to them. So that's where it came about, me knowing now more about the back end of things, yeah, than just being on set.
What are you
Yeah.
thinking about the future of CRLS? I mean, I remember we talked a while ago, and I was thinking, man, maybe it was 3 or 4 Cinegear shows ago. I forget who it was, Sumo, where they're starting to show some laser
Yeah.
LEDs, and I thought, man, if they get the color going and the output on these lasers, that could really be revolutionize even further reflective lighting. You have any thoughts about like what's coming down the pike in the next?
I mean, I've been stunned by the new Nanlux with a parallel beam
Yeah,
adapter for the lights. It's crazy the output that comes out of there, and it's at a quality level now where actually you can start stacking reflectors inside. So the quality when the output comes out is almost the same like far away. So you
yeah,
can like put a 50 closer, 100 further away. We did that for the live show yesterday to demonstrate it. So that's really exciting, and getting back to this idea of saying you can place a reflector far away,
yeah,
and you push a light source into it. And my issue is with this parallel beam lights that we had with Christian and other versions out there. It was a specific light for a specific reflector, and that makes no sense in a truck. No,
yeah.
how do you do that?
Right.
So to say it's an accessory, you push it on, you get it. That's great. And the same like with even with everything we're seeing on new products now. And I know I'm close to Germany, but I'm really trying to see it neutral. The stuff that Ari does with the X or with the Orbiter, I'm still
Yeah,
using it a lot because
yeah.
the quality is crazy, and even with the system on it, I really enjoy them too. So I don't know how Uwe feels. Which light sources do you actually use with the reflectors?
I'm using more or less every light source. So because sometimes it's just the source is already there, and then I decide, okay, well, let's go. We need a reflector on this setup, and then we use the one that is there. So, but of course, last week I used the parallel beam from Nanlux. That is, yeah, that's really something. The quality is quite good. But also, for example, the X21 with the hyper optics, the ARRI,
Yeah.
has the hyper optic has such a good quality. So, and you really translate it over the reflector, and then it's and you have this small angle, so it's really nice to distribute over a reflector with this fixture. So,
Yeah.
but to be honest, I'm not very into I'm using this and that for the reflectors. That's in the end, I use everything. So sometimes the sun,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. I also think that there's, because we're talking about the future, that where everything's going, the amount of speed, the less crews, the less money, so much is going to be about rethinking workflow and how we can get stuff done. Cameras are sensitive enough, LEDs are sensitive enough that already just go on house power. So just being able, how fast can we see results? How fast can we change them? And that's where I see the next step for Lightbridge too.